Good morning and welcome to Mount Cross virtually. I'm Pastor Chavaleh, and I'm so glad that you're with us today. My thoughts today continue from Monday's, pondering an impassioned God and the ways that we can find the sacredness in the everyday because of that. And we're still hanging with our beloved weeping prophet Jeremiah. And just to recap again, thank God for Jeremiah. He was so tuned in to the suffering of our world and of individuals, and then connected that to a God who is endlessly emotional. And this range of divine and holy emotion in Jeremiah is intense and broad. I want to remind about a verse that I talked about last week, and that is right in the middle of a declares the Lord section of Jeremiah. It's written, my anguish, I writhe in pain. Oh, the walls of my heart is beating wildly. I cannot keep silent, for I hear the sound of the trumpet, the alarm of war. And this is God speaking about God's anguish, God's pain, God's feeling of a wildly beating heart. Some people might view God as distanced and unemotional, but I think many of our sacred texts reveal a God who feels. And I don't think we lose anything by embracing a passionate God. So God is revealed as a God who embraces a broken creation, a God who covenants with a broken people, a God who is steadfast and faithful and loyal and true even in the face of evil, a God who likens relationship with people to a marriage and the faithlessness of people to adultery, a God who frequently uses the language of betrayal and heartache and pain to express reactions to the actions of human beings toward each other. No one forces God to remain faithful. No one makes God forgive. No outside force can drive God to do anything, which makes passages like the one we read today and others like it throughout the book of Jeremiah so intriguing. In this world that somehow seems so often indifferent, we worship an impassioned God. What if God is in anguish over us? What if being in relationship with us breaks God's heart? What if God's choice to love us from before the foundations of the earth involved choosing unimaginable suffering? Would that change how you relate to God's incarnation, Jesus Christ? Change how you see him? Change how you experience him? Change how you love him? Would it change what you think of as sacred? Jeremiah 6:16 reads, "Thus says the Lord, stand by the roads and look, and ask for the ancient paths where the good way is, and walk in it, and find rest for your souls." The sacredness of the world is ancient and it's endlessly new. There isn't anything inherently better about the old than the now, but there is a deeper magic that is ancient and powerful. And Jeremiah invites us to stop next to that ancient, to stand rather than wandering aimlessly, to look and to pray to see the sacred way, so that that is the world you purposefully walk in. We live in that other world through the mercy of God. And what's fascinating is whatever weird and quirky thing you enjoy is an invitation to explore the endlessly creative mind of God, to explore the sacred. In his book, Recapture the Wonder, author Mike Cosper tells of some wise words of his own mentor, Harold Best, who encouraged people to become amateurs, amateur historians, amateur musicians, amateur writers, or bird watchers, or anything else. The word amateur, he explained, means something like for the love of. Love something, attend to it, and discover its details and its secrets. Be curious, Harold said, and creation will never stop entertaining and fascinating you. I've pretty recently become an amateur goat keeper, and I do love them with my whole heart. They are fascinating and entertaining creatures with fully developed individual personalities. And one of their incredible details is rectangular pupils. Rectangles! There are cool evolutionary reasons for this, involving being prey and needing great peripheral and depth perception. But when I got curious about it, I found out that it's an extremely rare trait in creation. Goats, sheep, makes sense, toads, and octopuses, octopi, octopedes, whatever. An octopus with crazy unique mitochondrial DNA that doesn't match anything else on Earth has eyes like my goats. How can anyone that lives on this good Earth get bored ever? And isn't it amazing that God knew that rectangular pupils would exist on my little thistle goat and on an octopus underneath the Narrows Bridge before God said even one word about dividing the land from the waters? That they knew how these creatures would need to see before there was even light to see by. I have to admit, that thought makes me over emotional. Creation, if I even start to ponder it for a second, calls me to awe and to worship. Maybe it does you too. All ground is holy ground. In our most ancient text, the book of Job, when God shows up, described in the 38th chapter, it's not to affirm the words order and understandability, but the wild weirdness of it, the mysteriousness and the wonder. God tells Job, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set, or who laid its cornerstone, while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness, when I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, this far you may come and no farther, here is where your proud waves halt." We may understand so much more of the workings of creation today than when this was written by the author of Job. But those understandings just open up more mysteries, give us more opportunities for awe and wonder and worship. But what if you are like me and spend a lot more of your time among humans than by the ocean pondering the God who said, "This is where your proud waves halt"? There are many more days when I rush to get my goats fed and watered and give them a quick handful of animal crackers on my way out the door than days I get to spend time staring at their fantastically weird pupils. So maybe I forget. I get a little bit sleepy and caught up in my own little world, and maybe you do too. So I pray today that you and I will take a moment to stand beside those ancient paths of Jeremiah, to consider the God that Job describes, and that you and I together will be curious and notice the wonders around us. Our impassioned God is calling to you, placing all of these beautiful surprises in your path. Will you notice the gifts of God? I hope so. See you Sunday. Have a wonderful rest of your week.